Is it time to call a timeout? Welcome back to an episode of Always Another Game. And today you are joined by yours truly for a Shaun short episode, keeping it short and sweet and going inside my mind with a story or a bit of advice to help you in parenting, business, personal development, anything that drives you forward in life. And today I want to talk about taking time out. Now, anybody of you that knows sport, especially American sport, timeouts are a massive thing. In ice hockey, you're allowed to use one a game unless it's changed. And they are part of a strategy, a coach's strategy. They can be your biggest asset or they can actually be your worst nightmare. And I want to talk to you about three different reasons why they're used and how you can use that back in your life on taking a time out, taking a break, rest. It's not all about being exhausted. It's not all about being poorly and working till you're completely stressed and run down and burnt out. There are ways that you can use time out tactically. You can use it to disrupt your flow. You can use it to have a rest, but there's different ways you can use it. And I want to share those with you today. So the first one is that tactical strategy that said coach's biggest asset if used properly. And the biggest example of this is within a game, there may be a scenario where you just need a little bit extra time with your players to talk about a plan, a trick play, something like that you want to implement at a key point in a game. So in ice hockey, you have a power play at points where the opposition take a penalty and you have an extra player on the ice. And your coach may have a trick play or a plan to utilize that to try and get you an advantage over the other team to score a goal. You might use it in the last minute of the game. You might be a goal down. In ice hockey as well, you can pull your goalie. You may use that to create a play where you have 6 players on the ice against their 5. And you're just looking to try and gain an advantage by taking a second, pausing, speaking and communicating with your team and getting them to implement and trust that strategy to see if it pays off. I've seen it a number of times in sports where a coach has called a timeout, created a play, goal is scored. Now it's even. Now the momentum's with the team that scored. And next thing you know, that team that was behind with not long left in the game is now going to go on to win the game because of that simple timeout called. So if we're looking at that like in business, you might be stuck. You might not be thriving. You might be doing the same thing, but not seeing a different result. Take a timeout. Have a sit, take yourself away from your normal daily tasks and assess, look at things, analyze, and look outside of your business to see what you can introduce and maybe try moving forward to see if it makes a change. Remember, these coaches calling the timeout, they don't guarantee that these moves or these strategies are going to work. They're just giving it an opportunity. And that's all it is, taking a tactical timeout, a strategy-based timeout. You're just giving yourself an advantage on assessing the scenario and seeing if this new thing that you're going to try could possibly work. It may be the best decision you've gone. And it's got nothing to do with being tired. You may be fresh at the point of this timeout. That's okay. You don't have to be exhausted to take a pause. All right. So that's the tactical strategy one. The second one is actually, again, coach's biggest asset or could be your worst nightmare. And that's using a timeout to disrupt the flow. Now, you don't want to disrupt your flow negatively. If you're flowing, you want to let it flow. But in sport, you might want to disrupt the opposition. Now, I'll get into how that comes back to you in a second. But for example, played in multiple games, you start the game and the other team scored 2 goals straight away. Like literally goal. And you're like, oh no, this is not good. A coach at that point would take a timeout to stop that turning into 3 or 4 goals. Right, we're 2-0 down. This is not good, but let's get our breath and let's go again. It is amazing how many times that timeout disrupts the flow enough that either it stays at 2-0 for a little bit and you stop that 3rd or 4th, or next thing you know, you score a goal, 2-1, momentum shift back in your favor. Now, as I said, you don't want to disrupt your flow in life Yeah, a negative flow. If you are negative self-talking, if you have people around you creating a negative environment and you're being affected by it, you can call a timeout and disrupt that negative flow. So if you're thinking negatively and you're just constantly going negative, 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 and it's not breaking, remove yourself. Put yourself in a positive room. Remove yourself from that negative cycle. Disrupt the flow, gain the positivity back, and see what happens. Sometimes you don't always recover from that 2-0 deficit. I've seen it a number of times where calling that timeout really works because you're stopping the momentum of the negative, which is the other team, and you're giving yourself a chance just to regather your thoughts, just to compose yourself and go again. So it's really useful to know that you can disrupt the flow negatively and positively, but how you use it is the biggest advantage. And the last one I'm going to talk about today for timeout, it is a rest. Sometimes coaches have their favorite players in favorite scenarios. You may have a defensively strong unit of players that are trying to defend a 1-0 lead towards the end of the game, but they've had a lot of ice time. So the coach may call a timeout, which gives them timeouts of 30 seconds. But by the time they've started it and got back into the game, you're probably looking at least a minute. It gives them that extra breather. Just the same if they were on the bench in between shifts. You get a little pause, you catch your breath, you have some water, and you go again. So then you don't have to necessarily play players who aren't as strong defensively in that last phase of the game because you've freshened up your strongest players. This could be the same on the offense as well. Your offensive players are chasing a game. They've had lots of minutes. You call a timeout towards the end of the game so they can just play a little bit longer. They don't have to sit off whilst the game's on. They can take a rest whilst there is a pause in play. So the rest one is what most people get to in life. We just do so much. Life is so hectic. There's so much to do. And we are really good at that push pass and not so much good at that rest. But it's amazing sometimes what little short timeouts can do to help you keep going. I've experienced it. I'm sure you've experienced it. Sometimes you do need those longer breaks. It was May this year. I went on holiday. 10 days it took me to find an energy that I hadn't experienced in months. 10 days. 5 days before I felt pretty normal again. I started getting creative. 10 days to be fully recovered. Now, that I'm not advising that at all. I know my limits. I know my self-awareness. I knew I was going on holiday. All of that's in control. But in between those periods of pushing, I will take those timeouts and I will assess. Sunday nights, I do a check-in. How did the previous week go? What went well? What do I need to work on? I work on daily power lists. So I always assess and have a look and see how I'm doing. If I'm not feeling great within myself, if I've got signs of early burnout, I will slow down. I will take a timeout. I will assess and see what I need to do moving forward so I don't crumble. So what I want you to all think about today is how you can use a timeout strategically. Okay, that's what I want you to think about. Can you use it as a tactical advantage? Okay, things aren't going great or I want them to be better. What do I need to look at to improve this? Do you need to disrupt a negative flow? Okay, you're pushing, but nothing's working. You're in your own head. You're rubbish. This sucks. I'm never going to get this. How can you disrupt that flow? By calling a timeout, taking yourself off to somewhere positive, somewhere that you flourish, somewhere that you love going. See what it creates for you. See what you come back with. You'll be amazed what a short break of something like that can do for you mentally. And the last one is a rest. If you need a breather, call a timeout. Okay. If it's only a short breather, like you're just stuck on some work, short timeout. If it's big, if you know you're exhausted and you're not getting anything from the tactical and the disrupting a flow, take a longer timeout. Okay. This isn't ice hockey. You got longer than 30 seconds. It's just that crossover of analogies that I wanted to share with you today. So remember, there is no cost to joining me on this episode. They are absolutely free, but there is a fee. If you've taken anything away from today, please share. Please rate on Spotify or Apple, because the more this gets out to people, the more people the podcast can help, and to show that the transfer of skills of one area in life cross over to another. So if you're great in one area, you can be great in one that you're maybe struggling in at the moment. So thank you everyone for your support. Thank you for tuning in. And remember, there was always another game. Take care, everyone.